objects will have a barcode on it. In the very near future, if it's not the case already, every single one of those crates will have an RFID tag in it. And as, you know, what we're watching today has happened every day since, you know, since modern capitalism came into being, and yet this now has a shape and a presence on the network in a way it hasn't before. I can probably, if I am the brewery or the bottling company, I know where each individual pallet of those cans is at any given moment, and I know which truck it's on, and I know which business establishment that pallet has been moved into. The world has a shape on the network in a way that up until very, very recently it would have been very hard to get to. Increasingly, we can even look at the ecological sustainability footprint of these things. There's a wonderful site called sourcemap.com, which will allow you to plug consumer objects into it and see where the components of that object have come from, and what the carbon footprint of bringing that object together and bringing it to you for sale is. Increasingly, we're mapping our world in ways that tell us something about the choices that are made, the costs, the economic geography that underlies everyday life. Nothing is as simple anymore as men moving pallets of bottles off of a truck and into a business. It's been tagged, it's been identified. It's a flow that is objectively legible to somebody somewhere. And the question to my mind is, how do we get access to those flows? How can we make sure that when those flows involve some kind of differential benefit that's being realized in public space, how can we ensure that we as citizens of space get equal access to that? I talk a lot about a category of things that I call public objects. What I'm asking is that we define anything in public space that gathers information as a public object. And what I'm related to the conversation previously about making these things political, making them part of our everyday political decisions, what I'm increasingly asking is that we demand of our municipalities and the governments and the councils of the place that we live, A, that these public objects be defined as such, and B, that whatever information they gather is open and free to the public. In Brisbane, in Australia, for example, the bus shelters gather data about who's using them during what times of the day. That information is obviously valuable to us. It's valuable to us as citizens, it's valuable to people who use the bus network, it's valuable to the urban planners who decide where bus shelters are going to be sited. In Brisbane, that information wound up being sold to an advertising company on a private, exclusive, proprietary 10-year contract. That information is being gathered, whether we know it or not, every time we use the bus shelter, and yet we're not able to directly benefit from that relationship. I personally find that unacceptable. I personally find that not a particularly good bargain. So even though this stuff still may seem a little bit science fictional to a lot of places, and a lot of city bureaucrats are going to look at you like you're crazy if you come to them and say, we need policy around this, we need law around this. This is increasingly what we're going to have to ask of our public representatives, demand of them, make sure happens. Because I guarantee you that these flows produce value for somebody. Now, that's a private arrangement, and I don't particularly mind the fact that it's not particularly transparent to me. But if there's something in public space, if there's a sensor grid that underlies this street that is registering my presence, and what time of day I'm here, and maybe who I'm with, and making inferences about what I'm doing, those inferences have value, those inferences have meaning, and I want to be able to share in the benefit that is very, very easily foreseeably derived from those inferences.